the unofficial ambassadors of any country. Who are they? Taxi drivers. They're the first connection that you get to a country when you go to. It gives you an insight into the soul and the heart of the country. So I've been using taxis all my life to get to various things across many countries. But recently I got a taxi going to work here in lovely Singapore. And there was something about this taxi driver that couldn't resist the temptation to ask them if they would like to podcast, because I was very interested in their life. Now, a lot of taxi drivers here are amazing, always very helpful. Most of them want to talk and chit-chat on the way, make it more interesting. I love that. But there was something about this guy. There was something about the warmth of this gentleman. There was something about the friendship, the friendliness of this gentleman. So before I reached my office, I said, "Hey, do you mind podcasting with me?" And obviously he was taken back, But I tried to convince him. I just asked him for his number. And he very kindly gave it to me. And I spent the next few days trying to persuade him to talk to me on my podcast. He very kindly said yes. So today we're going to talk to Issac, a once upon a time engineer and educator, now retired, and a taxi driver in wonderful Singapore. What's it like being a taxi driver? Where do these people come from? What do they experience? And how does humanity in some way connect to the whole story? Let's talk. Hello. This is Tagore, and welcome to my podcast, A Pint of Imbecile Wisdom. Everyday people with everyday stories and great inspirations for the rest of us. So today I'm actually doing something that I've never done for the past 4 years. I'm talking to somebody who is, in my opinion, an unofficial ambassador of this beautiful country called Singapore. So I was going to work, I booked a taxi, and I got onto the cab, and I had the pleasure to talk to the driver. And we got talking, and within, I think, 20 minutes, I reached my office. But I found a lot of warmth in this person. And I just said to him, "Would you like to podcast with me?" And it took a little bit of convincing, but here he is. So we're going to be talking about the life of a taxi driver, how these people are the unofficial ambassador of a nation, and in this case, Singapore. And what are some of the things that people do not know about Singapore? Some of the great places to go to, some of the great foods to eat, okay? But there's a lot more to it. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to connect it to the theme of the podcast this year, humanity and leadership. And these guys get to meet so many people from different walks of life and everything. So let's know what that's all about. So without any further ado, Issac, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I was a bit taken by surprise when you actually posed a question, "Would you like to join my podcast?" I said, "What podcast?" Okay, I think you elaborated a bit on what you do, and I think perhaps I thought it could be a wonderful platform for me to share some of my values and stuff like this, because I was really asking myself, is there anyone who really want to listen to my story, a taxi driver story, for that? Anyway, let me introduce myself. I'm Issac Chin, a true-blue Singaporean, born 67 years ago on this little red dot, as a Indonesian president once called us, and bred here as well. I guess I consider myself a third-generation Singapore Chinese of Hakka roots, because my grandfather came from China, from a town called Dapu in Guangdong province, and settled down in a place which is now part of Malaysia, Johor Pengerang. And you can actually take a bumboat from Changi to Pengerang itself. But anyway, as the story goes, my dad was born along with many of his siblings. I think I counted 9, if not more. And he came and settled in Singapore. My mom is of Penang origin, came here and they met. And I guess I was the first one to be born. 6 others followed. Okay. And I guess we started life in a very little kampong called Changi Point. I think it's now called Changi Village. So I was raised there for the better part of the life. I enjoyed my childhood tremendously, growing up with my siblings, in that little kampong where most of the houses are all one level instead of flats you see in Singapore these days. In any case, from there, I was very lucky that my father had the foresight to send me to a English language medium school. Whereas vernacular schools were quite common those days, So and that brought me all the way to secondary school. When I was in Sec 2, a team, I think from the government, I don't know which task force, came in and tried to sell us the idea of building the nation, and you are better off joining the technical stream. I thought about it and I said, hey, this guy sounds okay. So I actually joined the technical stream in Sec 3. Tanjung Secondary School, was there for 4 years. Graduated with they call it the GCA level. Then from there on, I joined NUS as a student in the mechanical engineering faculty. Graduated in 83. And I was lucky enough to be employed by a big multinational from Holland called Philips. And I joined them as a mechanical design engineer. They actually give us the benefit of a 9 months training before actually putting us on the job. I was very grateful for that. So I grew in that job for 9 years, and I was promoted to a chief engineer. And another company, a competitor actually, this time is a French company called Thomson, lured me to become the manager of the design outfit, the mechanical design outfit. So from chief engineer in Philips, I became a mechanical design engineer, a manager rather, in that outfit. And I did the job for another 8 years or so. And from then on, I moved on to a few local companies, heading out their design team before landing as a final job with an MNC called Benchmark. And I think I was there for 3 or 4 years before they decided to move the unit to Penang. And so I had to fire my staff and I fired myself as well. And that landed up me with a year, I think, without a job. And I guess that was also troublesome times at the time. And a year later, a friend of mine suggested, why don't you join the school? I said, what for? Oh, what, you can share your engineering expertise with those kids, in the subject called design and technology. I said, oh, why not? So I did it for 6 months as a relief teacher. And my principal said, hey, I think you're doing a good job here. Why don't you sign up full-time? But not as a full-fledged teacher. At the time, they have a scheme called Allied Educator, AED in short. And the schools have the power to decide which potential employee could join them. MOE doesn't ever say that. So why not? Okay, so I joined them, and it lasted 12 years. So I think I enjoyed that time that I had with kids, because it's a totally different experience compared with what I had as an engineer, because I have to deal with more human situation rather than I would say job-wise situation. And I enjoyed looking after and nurturing those kids, but unfortunately, I had to leave when my retirement call came at 65 2 years ago. In fact, I could have gone on for another 2 more years. Had MOE offered me another 2 years, but then the re-employment wasn't offered, so I left the public service at the age of 65 2 years ago.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, so humble beginnings to a technical education to joining a multinational, then heading a team, and then becoming an educator and empowering younger kids. That's quite an interesting story, Issac, and that's what I found intriguing about you. So tell me something. So you've been a taxi driver now for a little while, and what I've always found amazing about taxi drivers, and I think I said it in my introduction, they're the unofficial ambassadors of a country, any country you go to, right? So because I'm talking about humanity, I'm talking about leadership now, right? Tell me, what's it like, before I get to that, what's it like, what's a day like as a taxi driver?
Okay, before I go into that, perhaps I can share why I took up this taxi
Yes,
driving
please.
agent actually, because I was off my contract, retired. I was thinking, what should I do? Should I go back to an office job? Look for something maybe in the education field, go to a tuition center. So I was thinking, I don't want to do all that anymore. I want to do something more personal, more fulfilling, that enables me to manage my time, the freedom to do what I want. So I thought, and since I like driving, I've been driving since, oh God, it's 30 over years now, almost 40, I think. I said, why not I take up taxi driving, and that enables me to bring passengers from one point to another point, and I can go maybe looking for food after that. I'm a foodie actually. So whenever I hear nice places to eat, and whenever my taxi trip takes me near there, I will certainly make a point to drop by. But in any case, that's how I got started. So I joined the biggest taxi company in Singapore. I don't have the names here, but viewers would know which company is that. And I think they offer a pretty good deal, although the rental is higher. But they do offer, because I have to pay for my petrol, so the petrol is actually cheaper than market rate. So that was what enticed me to join this company rather than another company. But in any case, I've been driving now just past my second anniversary actually. Now today is 15, right? So anyway, I had my second anniversary, and I had a 9 bonus, so the company gave me the bonus, and it came to my account. But in any case, that was the start of my new life, I would think. My first professional life was as an engineer, second part as an educator, and now I find myself driving a taxi. Quite a different change scenario, I think. In that case, part of my taxi life is very simple. I decide when and where I want to go. And for me, I don't have a relief. Most other taxi drivers, I would say some don't, but most do. They have actually a relief. So they take, say, half a day, and the other half a day they pass on to another driver. And of course, they share the rental. For me, I decide to do it myself. That means to say what they call OMO, one-man operation. Okay, so, but of course, I had to bear the brunt of the full rental. But that's fine with me. Over the 2 years, I find that I have worked out my timing roughly, when to go out, when to come back, when to take a rest, and still manage my time pretty. Because another main reason why I take up taxi driving is because my kids are all grown. They're in the 30s. My wife is still working, and my house is an empty nest. And if I stay any time longer in my house without doing anything, I'm going to be senile very soon. So that's another major factor prompting me to take up taxi driving. But in any case,
yeah. So what's the day like as a taxi driver?
Okay, so for me, as I said, I'm flexible, but normally I have a routine. I will go out in the early morning, anytime between 4 to 6 a.m. and lasting through what they call the peak hour period. The peak hour period usually starts at 6 in the morning and end at 9:30, but they do have the midnight hours before 6 a.m. So midnight hours, the actual charge is 50%. The peak hour charge is another 25%. So I try to work, the way I work is I try to work, I would say, more smartly. I'm not a smart person actually per se, but I try to work more smartly. Try to work with those peak periods, so that you can actually gain more for the amount of hours you put in. So basically, I started about 4 to 6 in the morning, finish out about 10 a.m., and I go home. And I take a break.
Wow. Okay.
I take a break from anything from 2 hours to 4 hours. Then I continue with my afternoon shift until probably about 10 p.m., So in all, I think I probably average about 12 hours driving per day, average. Sometimes can be as low as 8, sometimes can be slightly longer. So it depends on I guess, my mood as well as the physical condition I'm in at that point in time. Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the road for anywhere between 8 and 12 hours.
Mm.
Before I get to the question that I really want to ask you. Tell me, what are some of the pros and cons of being a taxi driver, in your opinion?
I guess we are in a way our own boss. For example, I'm not the employee of the taxi company because they don't pay me, and I actually pay them to rent their vehicle, what they call the taxi meter system, as well as an app in which they actually give out jobs. So I pay them actually. So in retrospect, I'm actually their customer. I'm not their employee. So I kind of feel good about that. For the first time, hey, I'm not an employee. I'm running my own business. I'm paying the taxi company. I'm renting the taxi from. But in that case, besides the hours, I like the fact that I interact with customers. Anything from short 5 minutes to 1 hour, because from Changi Airport to the other end of Singapore, the Tuas, it could take as long as an hour depending on the traffic. So in those minutes that I have with my passenger, I call it the transient conversation time. It's transient actually, because you speak with them for a few minutes, and after they leave the taxi, that's it. No? So most of the conversation I don't remember, but some are so poignant I can remember till today. Very interesting stories I've come across.
Okay, and what are the cons of the flip side of being a taxi driver? What is it that you don't like?
Okay. I guess my customers, majority of them, in fact, most of them are pretty okay. And some of them don't want to talk. I leave them alone. I give them the space. Some are chatty, especially those who are one-on-one with me. And I think they're more elderly. So I think they want to talk. So I share. I listen. I basically listen. Once in a while, then I'll just ask them a question or two. But I try to lend an empathetic ear to these passengers who wants to talk to me about their problem, about their life at the moment, or things that they encounter at that very point in time. So I become their listening ear. So I think I'm proud that I'm able to hold a conversation with anybody, okay? From a day job worker to a CEO to an MD, or for anybody, I can hold a conversation with any of these people on their level. So I think I'm pretty happy about that, and pretty proud of the fact that I can hold conversation with any of my passengers who wants to talk with me.
Okay, so now I guess there's not much of a flip side to being a taxi driver, which is great, by the way.
Oh, so, I do have a side. Maybe I share with you in a moment, but yeah, go ahead.
So what's the flip side then? Because that was the question, yeah.
Sometimes we have, I would say, not so cooperating passengers. In one instance, I actually had a domestic worker with two young kids. They came with a taxi. I think it was a call job. And they reached a destination and they paid me. And I moved on to the second job they came. And when I reached the location to pick up the second job, my passenger said, "Hey, uncle, your back seat has vomit." Oh, I said, wow. So apparently the housekeeper, I don't know, housekeeper, the maid had let the kid, or rather the kid was vomited and did not inform me. So I have to spend some time to clean the taxi. Fortunately for me, this next passenger was kind enough to wait for me while I cleaned the taxi. But fortunately, also, it was actually a baby vomit. So it was not so smelly.
Oh, gosh. Terrible.
when a drunk person gets in a car and vomited, it's terrible. I do have instances like that, but not so bad. Yeah.
Okay. So, as I said in my introduction, you're the unofficial ambassador of a country. It's like you must get to meet lots of people, and you already said that most of the people are very talkative and interactive and everything, and that you're able to converse or you're like the unofficial free of charge shrink to passengers, in your taxi, and you're listening to them and you're conversing with them. So let's talk about you picking up two types of passengers. One are tourists, and the next are people who live within Singapore. Okay.
All right.
So first of all, picking up tourists, what would you tell such people about Singapore which they don't usually know? Because a lot of people tend to go to Gardens by the Bay or whatever. What are some spots in Singapore that people don't usually know are so amazing?
I guess the tag that you use, the unofficial ambassador of Singapore, is probably quite apt insofar as these foreign tourists are concerned, because most of them could be coming into Singapore the second or multiple times, and especially the ones that come in first time. And because normally I'll greet them whenever they get in my taxi, and I will ask them where you from and all that. And if they are in the mood to chat with me, then I'll kind of probe more and introduce more. They will sometimes ask me, hey, where would be a good place to go, in Singapore, since we are here the first time. I would normally not recommend them the tourist spots because they're all there. I would say you should try the way we live our life as locals, where we live, where we eat, and how we interact with each other. So I would always point them out to the fact that majority of Singaporeans like us, 80% actually, about there is what the government says in the latest population figures. About 80% live out in what I told them government-built housing called HDB. And you should actually take a train. I say, well, you should take a train, and it's very, very affordable to any of these satellite towns and see for yourself how we locals live. And better still, venture into a hawker center. And I describe to them what's a hawker center. Basically food stores where the food is being sold, that they're not being found in streets anymore because for hygienic reasons. And they're very cheap, and they're very affordable actually, and tasty too. Anything from $3 to $5, you can have a plate of noodles or rice. I think that most of them taken the idea that, hey, this is something we could do. Other than, of course, they will still visit tourist spots like the Gardens by the Bay, go up to the 56th or 7th floor of Marina Bay Sands Hotel. So things like that, I try to recommend to them our local lifestyle rather than touristic sites. And I think that should be something that will help them have a better perspective of what Singapore is and how most Singaporeans live their life. Of course, I said there are a lot of 20% still live in those private housing, be it a condo or landed housing, and those are the privileged lots, I guess.
You know what? One thing that strikes me about Singapore, I've been living here for just over a decade, is not just how secular Singapore is, but even the government's effort to make communities live together. And I'm coming back to that when I say an HDB. It's amazing how the government had the foresight to put the right ratio of communities together in an HDB or in a housing board, as you call it. And that has actually contributed a lot to a typical Singaporean's DNA. If I look at my colleagues and whatever, Singaporeans don't actually know the depth of communal conflict. They don't know. I know Singapore in its past had some history on it, but Singaporeans can't relate to this concept of communal disharmony, if you know what I mean. Like lots of other places in the world do. Yeah, I mean the food is shareable by everybody. As you said, in a hawker center, you got stalls that sell Chinese food and Malay food and Indian food and whatever other food that you want to have. It's all just built so well to help the community grow together. And I think tourists who come into Singapore are sometimes taken back by this, saying, really? But then they are immediately followed by a sense of, wow, that's amazing, So going to these sort of settlements and going to these sort of hawker center is indeed a very unique thing for many tourists who come into Singapore, especially from the Western world. Yeah. So tell me something. In your opinion, Isaac, 2 or 3 tourist places besides the housing stuff that tourists are not aware of in Singapore, which are amazing.
I As I said, I will not recommend those touristy places to these tourists that bought my taxi. And I'll just point out a few places that they could go. For instance, I said, why don't you take a train to Tampines town, for instance? Because Tampines town is quite a developed town in the east side. You can actually access it through the train on the Green Line, and that brings you. It's quite a regional town in the sense. In fact, I think the government plan is a regional town in different places. Tampines in the east, Woodlands in the north, Jurong East in the west. And these regional towns are more developed. They have more facilities. For instance, Tampines New Town has 3 malls, and they also have other infrastructure for like beside the residents living there. They have also surrounding industrial facilities, facilitate the working people. So the people actually within the satellite town do not really have to travel out of town because they could actually live there, they work there, and they can live their life there. And maybe occasionally they want something different, they want something more gambar. They say, hey, let's go to town. But other than that, certain towns are quite fulfilling in the sense that they can live their life there. But in case, like what I said, this one place, so I thought, hey, why don't you go to Changi Village? Changi Village is also where the place I grew up. I said that is like a coastal town. I think no more than 4 or 5 story, most of the houses there. And from there, you can actually take a bum boat, from the jetty there across to the island of Pulau Ubin. I think it's just a 10-minute trip. This says, I think it costs you about $4. It's a 10 minutes boat ride. And you can go to the rustic island on Pulau Ubin, and you can walk, you can cycle, or you can just relax at the beach there, or the restaurant. The seafood restaurants are quite marvelous there. I've eaten there a few times. So these are the places I would recommend, for tourists to go. Beside, of course, I point them out to the major tourist sites as well, Yeah.
But you're such a typical Singaporean. In your answer, you had to talk about food. So on that topic, tell me, which are some of the secret, lovely hawker stalls to eat in Singapore, which not many people know of?
I think perhaps we have about 118 stores managed by an agency called NEA, National Environment Agency. And there are still a few other hawker centers managed by SLA, for instance. There's private one too. I think I have traversed through almost all of them except one that recently opened in Jurong West. I think it's Block 50, I think. But in case, I have my favorites among them because some places hold dear to me because of the favorite food I like to eat. For instance, I like to eat what they call orchian, which is actually oyster omelette. And good ones will be found, for instance, in Newton. There's one store selling there. And another one could be found in Toa Payoh, Block 22. So places that have nuggets of good food. I can't name them all here, but I remember them. So I normally I put a note in my handphone as to places I visited, food I've enjoyed. So I'm going to make my last stop at this NEA hawker center called Jurong West, and that completes my so-called personal journey to visit all the hawker centers in Singapore. Yeah.
Have you ever thought, given your background in academics and your background as being an educator and everything, so have you ever thought about writing a book about the lives of people that you've met? Have you thought about writing a book about the best places in Singapore? Have you thought about writing a book about the best places to eat in Singapore? Have you ever thought about that? Because I don't think of a better person who could think of something like this than a taxi driver.
That thought has crossed my mind. I was thinking when I really retired, because these days I don't have much time to do it else other than to wake up, drive, sleep, drive again, because I'm trying to, although I'm retired now because my kids are all grown up and I don't really have to earn for the family. I just earn for my own pocket bit. But I'm trying to put as much money as possible in my pocket before I actually can't do that anymore, But in any case, it struck me as to what I call memoirs of a taxi driver, maybe a 2-term or 1-term or whatever, memoirs of an allied educator, and memoirs of an engineer. So that thought has crossed my mind, but I have not put that thought into action yet, actually.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question which I didn't think I was going to ask you, but it just crossed my mind now.
Okay.
What can the rest of the world learn from Singapore and Singaporeans when it comes to just humanity?
I guess being what I call live and let live, you know. So a lot of people live and let die. That's where the problem started. So try to be, less confrontational. Try to be more accommodating. Try to be more empathetic ear, and just let things pass that doesn't pleases you. Because a lot of conflicts always happen when you take it upon yourself to address this conflict. For example, some people say, "Why are you staring at me?" You just let it pass. Because if you stare back and you let another word back and you're going to end up with a fight. So let things pass by and enjoy the moment and try to be less confrontational, I think. Perhaps there's a way, from my personal opinion, how you should live our life, you know.
And respectful, right? And that's one thing I see in Singapore. Respectful of each other. I mean, when I first moved to Singapore, somebody asked me, what's the best thing you like about Singapore? And I said, I have a bus pass. You know, I can get onto a bus. And I'm on the bus with a laborer, with a CEO, with an MD, with a doctor, with a nurse, you know. And that's what I liked about this country, is that everybody has a place to live and everybody is respectful of who's next to them. And that's something which I think the world needs to learn from Singapore.
I think it's very important because...
now tell me something.
Yeah, you don't follow the rules that have been set. The chaos can strike. For instance, our taxi system here is very simple. We abide by our meter system. Once the passenger get to the car, we start the meter, and once the passenger get off or disembark, we off the meter. So we follow the meter system. We do not set our own rules. Some taxi drivers in other countries, although the meter system is present, they don't use the meter. They will try to set a fare and argue. So in a way that they destroy the integrity of the system, because the passenger will wondering, are you offering me a good rate or, you know? So it's important that, for example, taxi drivers, like the rest of us, also we kind of comply to most of the regulations that have been sent in, so that there'll be order. Okay, there'll be order basically. And if we respect each other, so keep our views to ourselves as much as possible, I think we can live and let live.
But you know, I think you said something there, which is, and that's what Singapore is, right? It's process driven, it's disciplined, it's respectful, and freedom at the same time. You know, with all of these, I think makes it together. So tell me something. I wanted to ask you a question about this, and I wanted to ask this question to you the other day, but I never got a chance. It's just that, what is the one thing you would like to tell mankind, and I mean men, women, whatever, about to bear in mind when they're interacting with the taxi driver?
Well, I think one important thing is respect. You need to respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you need to trust that the taxi driver is bringing you home safely, okay, from one point to another. And you trust that the taxi driver is not doing long journeys, so doing journeys as short as possible to bring you home. So basically, safety, bring you back in good time, and do not engage in any other conversation or whatever that may displease the passenger. So basically, that's what I think the taxi driver should do. Courteous. Once a passenger gets in a taxi, say something nice to him, and if there's a response is good, follow up with more questions. If the response is not there, just keep your mouth shut and let the passenger have the space that they deserve behind in the back seat. Yeah.
So you listen to a whole lot of people. So you listen to a whole lot of people talking to you about their lives.
Yeah.
Get passengers who want to listen to your life?
Most of them don't. They rather that I listen to them, but some of them do. Not too many. That I actually shared with them my personal stories, because once the conversation gets along and they share with me, I share with them, and the conversation become more interesting. Like I said, normally it happens with the more elderly people. So it's nice when I hear life stories that evolve right in front of me, and I kind of been an educational moment for me too, aha moment. That I'm privileged actually to be able to listen to all these stories, their lives and all that, and I consider this vocation actually the front point where actually I become, like you say, the unofficial ambassador of Singapore, especially to a foreigner coming to Singapore.
So tell me something.
Mm.
Given that you've had this wonderful background in the corporate world, in the educational world, and now as a taxi driver, do you think, how does the leadership, play a role in your daily life, especially now as a taxi driver? Is there an element of leadership in the job that you do?
I guess there's not too much leadership in the sense, because basically our job is to bring them from point to point. But I do offer them, for example, the journey is long. I have a couple of routes, for instance, and I try to let the customers know what the routes are and let them have their view. And if they're acceptable to my proposal, and I will go along with the route that I've proposed to them. So in that sense, I'm actually trying to get the customer involved in the journey itself. So maybe some elements of leadership there, I'm not so sure.
How about elements of humanity?
Humanity is very simple. Treat all people with respect, like I treat my passengers with respect, and because they actually pay me, so they are actually my customers. So I treat them well. Once in a while, I get a bit difficult one, but I do weather those conditions because there's no point in trying to challenge the passengers. So treat them with respect and engage them as much as possible. Have an empathetic ear, especially certain people, especially some elderly ones who have really amazing personal stories to tell you. That's just
you mentioned the word empathy, you mentioned the word respect, you mentioned the word engagement with passengers on long routes, and that is actually science. You see the connect between humanity and leadership, right? These are the three things that actually use a lot. So stories about passengers who are living in Singapore, be they Singaporeans or long-term permit holders or whatever. I mean, how are they different from tourists coming in your opinion?
I guess the locals versus the foreign visitors, especially the tourists, the basic difference is that the locals are more concerned with their lives, their daily lives. The tourists are coming here because they are seeking either information or they're seeking places or visit that they could go. So the focus is quite different, The tourists normally don't have time to tell me about their personal adventure and all that, but locals do, especially those are long trips. I've encountered. So the emphasis is different. For locals, they are more on their lives here, conditions here, living conditions, and of course our government. Our government conversation are always there.
I'm sure. And I guess the tourists want to know where to go, where to eat, what to see, what to do. So it's that kind of conversation. Yeah.
Also,
sorry, go on.
Assets of especially the tourists, what Singapore is in a nutshell. For instance, I always share with them. Our latest population figures is like 5.9 million, and local population is only 3 million, and we do have a large, group of foreigners living here. And the fact that the foreigners and locals can live in harmony is a testament of the safe society we have in Singapore. Security is key, though. Security is key. And of course, harmony is not taken for granted. We have laws here to deal with people who go against race, religion, or for that matter, culture, for those who want to exploit. So to keep the harmony that we have in Singapore. So we can't take for granted things, So we have life here. I have traversed the world, except for continent of South Africa and South America during my corporate days. I think I'm blessed. I have went to many countries. I've seen life in those countries, good countries, poor countries, and the fact is that Singapore are blessed. We have a peaceful country. You look at the situation in the Middle East, not so good, right? There's conflict there and all that. Except for that matter, there are conflict all over the world, but we are living in peace here. So Singaporeans should be blessed, actually.
I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, I've also lived in many parts of the world. I think it's the most safest, most wonderful place that
Mm-hmm.
I've ever been to, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to live here. Even as a work permit holder. So, so there's this rumor. It's not a rumor. It's actually a true thing. Singaporeans like to stand in a line. So if Singaporeans see a line, they will just go and join the line and then tap the person in front of them and say, "What's the line for?" But they will join in line, and that's part of the discipline that Singaporeans have. But it's also a very quirky, cute, beautiful habit that Singaporeans have is that they always like to form and get in line without even knowing what the line is for. What's that about?
I guess perhaps we can look at it from two perspectives. First, a line is normally formed when people want something, right? Especially a launch of a new stuff, new cafe and all that. People are curious. They'll join the line, to take in whatever that is being offered, new toy, new cafe, new whatever. When such things appear, you definitely can see a line. And there's a new launch of iPhone 15 this year, right? You can see a line as with previous edition. So they always want to so-called be the first to own a good stuff, And line is also formed anywhere. For example, a hawker center. If I go into a hawker center and I survey around, if I see that there's some store that has a line, chances are that the stores offer better food, tasty, affordable, and they're more inclined to join the line rather than another store because I'm new to the location. I wouldn't know what's good, So yeah, just suppose
as I said, I've been here for this over a decade. I've never seen anybody cut a line. Everyone is so disciplined about it. That's amazing. People are so disciplined about staying in line. Another quirky question about Singaporeans. And
yes.
Whenever I go out for a meal with my colleagues at work at the hawker store, there's a habit. Singaporeans like to click photographs of their food. What's that about?
I guess for memory's sake, and I do, and I'm very religious about that because for every meal that I take, I will take a snap of the food, and beside the food itself, I will take a snap of the stall that is offering the food. So that I've been doing that for I can't remember as long as I can remember. Yeah, I've been doing that. In a way, I'm keeping a history of what I've done, what I've eaten. Sometimes I even form a composite picture, the food, the stall, and all that. And I give a rating as well. But this for me, okay? So some others may not be so keen on doing that. For instance, I have a youngest brother. He doesn't want to do that. And he takes pictures, it's sloppy, And each time I have educate him, he still come out the same pictures. So different folks, different strokes. I guess.
Of course. Yeah. So,
I guess
Issac, my last question to you, sort of towards the end of this podcast, you've been an engineer, you've been an educator, and now you're a taxi driver. Which of those three professions have you enjoyed the most? I'm sure you've enjoyed all three, but which have you enjoyed the most?
I would say, I enjoy being an engineer because I'm actually contributing to nation building. I'm an educator. I'm actually nurturing the future leader and the child. But for taxi driving, I think I am enjoying very, very well because basically I have the freedom to do what I want actually at last, not constrained by office hours, So I decide when's my working hours. I decide which route I will take because jobs are being offered to us all the time, and we can actually accept or not accept them. That's part of the overall plan. So basically, when I go out on a day-to-day basis, I have a plan as to what I want to do, roughly. So if a job that doesn't come along, for instance, I said I want to operate in this area, then I'll just do not accept jobs that go to a different area. Okay, and I live in Pasir Ris, a town very near the airport. So I go to the airport very often to pick up passengers. So tourists and foreigners alike form probably maybe 20, 30, maybe as high as 50, depending on the number of trips I make to the airport. So I would say taxi driving now is giving me fulfillment in my personal goals, as to enjoying life. At this stage, I'm considered a semi-retired guy, but I still earning some money to, keep some pocket money, for some rainy days and all that. I think I have a blessed life, and there's some very defined moments in my life that for example, I want to share. I'm very fortunate that you met my wife. Now we are now into the 39 year of our marriage, and we have 3 grown-up kids, and all of them had their family of their own. I've got 3 good-looking grandchildren, all boys, 3 of them. And I have also children. They are 4-legged, So my kids like to have dogs. So 2-legged ones and 4-legged ones.
Oh wow!
And I guess there's one defining moment in my life, if I may share.
Of course.
The fact that I got lost in the virgin jungle in Selangor called Bukit Lagong 7 years back, overnight, because I was there with a group of people who were doing what they call a hash run through the jungle. But I got lost and basically I did not follow the rule set. And I was in the jungle for close to 18 hours. It was really a torture, but I survived, So, and I had the benefit of training in the army, look for water source and found the water source. And of course, it's not a plain walk down the river. You had to go over logs and all that. So it was really something I will remember for the rest of my life. Fortunately for me, I found the river source, and a very kind family at the end of it offered me some comfort and was able to make it back to Singapore. That was something I will remember for the rest of my life.
Wow. So 18 hours in a jungle.
More or less.
Did it change your life in any way? Did you come out of the jungle? Did you come out of the jungle with a new perspective on life, a new perspective on loved ones, family? What happened?
Yeah, I was telling myself, I think I'm fortunate that I have second chance in life, because in the same night, I think another guy passed away. He went to the jungle. Okay, so fortunate for me, I made it out. So I thought perhaps I should not just look at material gains as what I should pursue. People are important. My folks are important. So I said I'll take better, how should I say, control of what I do in the future, insofar as relating to people, to situations and all that, to be a calmer person, and basically to have a peace of mind. So once you have a peace of mind, you can focus, you can do things easier. So that was a challenge I set myself. I think I have achieved it to a certain degree at this stage. Although I'm not blessed with lots of money, but I'm blessed with a lot of peace of mind, happiness, and folks that surround me.
And I'm sorry that the other person died in the jungle, but I'm so glad that you survived, because you have made an impact. At least in that 20 minutes that we shared on the taxi drive a few weeks ago, you made such an impact on me within those 20 minutes that I had to ask you, would you like to podcast with me? Because I've never asked a random person, whether they want to pod. But there was some magic about you, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to talk to you, to share your story about your life, to share wisdom about Singapore and the unknown secret, places that people should visit and eat at some hawker centers. Thank you so much, Issac, for talking.
Thank you for asking me to join your program. I really appreciate it.
And I know we're going to meet again. I just know that I've got your number, you've got my number, and we're going to send each other quirky messages on WhatsApp, and hopefully we're going to meet again very soon for some noodles.
I'm sure. Like for instance, I met a passenger 4 times, but he didn't know. I know. Not likely that you meet the same passenger next time, right? But I met the same passenger 4 times. Crazy. You can't imagine that, right? Who knows? Down the road, I probably will meet you again.
Okay. Well, thank you once again, and have a good day.
Same to you, Dominic. And once again, thank you for inviting me to this program. Bye-bye.